Let's see what people know about semiconductors. Semiconductor and a wide bandgap semiconductor. Semiconductors. We can improve semiconductors by making them wide bandgap. Wide bandgap semiconductors. Semiconductors. Semiconductors make up a huge industry. According to a 2012 KPMG study, semiconductors make up a $304 billion market. $304 billion. What do you know about semiconductors? What do you know about semiconductors?
They're not quite conductors and they're not quite insulators.
The reason it's called a semiconductor is because it semiconducts. The semiconductor is right here in between an insulator and a metal, or conductor. The bandgap is right in between the sizes of the metal and the insulator. What is a bandgap?
Bandgap?
The bandgap is the space in between the conduction band and the valence band. This is important because the larger that bandgap is, the more electricity, the more energy we can get out of our electronics.
Well, I don't know too much about it.
I wish I remembered it.
I have no idea. You care to teach me about it?
You can think about it this way. When an electron receives energy, it jumps up to a higher energy level. Then, when it relaxes down, it gives off all the energy it gained. If this gap is larger, then it can let off more energy when it relaxes back to its ground state. Where can a semiconductor be found? Did you know that they're in your computer? Electronics.
Electrical devices and circuits.
Electrical circuits and lasers.
Well, I know they're used in computers for transistors, but also all over the place for, cars or everywhere you need any kind of processing or, microchip like that.
Imagine a world where all our electronics are more efficient. Wider bandgaps means not only getting more power out of our electronics, but it also means it can operate over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It has 10 times higher voltages and uses 90% less power. Do you know the difference between a semiconductor and a wide bandgap semiconductor?
The width of the bandgap?
Semiconductor with a wider band gap than average.
Mass use of wide bandgap semiconductors means that we'll have cost-efficient electronics, saving billions of dollars in costs. And there's many procedures and compositions used to make wide bandgap semiconductors. With wide bandgap semiconductors, we can get more power out of our electronics. Having a wider bandgap means high-efficiency electronics. Methods for increasing a semiconductor's bandgap include using new compositions, new application temperatures, and using tiny nanostructures. Do you know what common semiconductors are made of?
I don't know anything.
Material.
I have no idea. I don't know, I've heard a little bit about it, but not a ton.
Let's take another look at the compositions of semiconductors. Generally, semiconductors are made out of silicon, and sometimes germanium. But the new wide bandgap semiconductors have compositions such as gallium arsenide, silicon carbide, titanium oxide, zinc oxide, gallium nitride, and even diamond.
Ooh, I'd say that's incredible.
Many of these wide bandgap semiconductors are made using physical vapor deposition, a process that uses high temperatures and temperature control to evaporate and deposit the materials into beautiful crystal shapes, nanowires, and even hexagons.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Some of the nanostructures for these wide bandgap semiconductors are pretty crazy. Awesome! That's wonderful. Interesting.
High tech.
Awesome. This one shows graphene in ribbons stretched over a silicon carbide substrate. The gray regions are where the graphene forms semiconducting panels. The red region is known as a buffer zone of graphene. This method of producing semiconducting graphene usually doesn't work, but since the graphene is forced into the silicon carbide trenches, there's localized strain and special bond angle in the gray areas. The bond structure of graphene is altered when it's bent over the steps, and the bandgap becomes wider. So, we learned a lot about semiconductors, but I forgot to tell you how changing temperature application can change bandgaps. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the rainbow. If you look Light is naturally divided up into colors, and this is no coincidence. Red is a low energy, long wavelength color, whereas blue and purple are high energy, short wavelength colors. Light is divided by energy. Here I have liquid nitrogen. Liquid nitrogen is extremely cold. When we light up different LEDs, they're generally different colors. This one, for example, is yellow. Yellow is right in the middle of the rainbow. When we cool down this LED, we're going to increase the size of the band gap. The LED has turned green. Green is a higher energy color than yellow.
Semiconductor with a wider band gap than average. That just means the energies for that transition's higher.
Our semiconductor is awesome.
Yeah, they are.
Thanks! Think about that.
All right, I will.
Semiconductors. Woo!